So, I don't know if there's a more unanimously agreed upon fan companion piece to Five Nights at Freddy's as much as the Living Tombstone's FNaF 1 song. I mean, it's been around for practically just as long, released just 22 days after the first game's drop. And whether it's the dangerously frantic visuals provided by Andrew Demig, that tubey synthy backing track, or even the opening topbanter.net stinger, this song's every detail has been etched into the back of my brain since I was 12 years old. I am now 22. And with such an important piece of FNAF's legacy hitting the Big Ten just as the main series itself has, I'm kind of eager to do a deep dive into everything FNAF 1 song. I want to see how far its influence has spread, to how it and its legacy have evolved over time, and critically analyze the thing to the best of my ability, if I'm allowed. But it's not like the Living Tombstone was always synonymous with Five Nights at Freddy's.
Hello everyone, I'm the Living Tombstone.
Yoav Lando of the Living Tombstone, Fox in 2006, has been spitting out tracks as an internet musician and DJ for roughly the same amount of time I'd been on the internet. Oh, there I go, withering away. And even after all that time, still fundamentally reflecting modern TLT. A back catalogue consisting of remixes and covers of video game music and popular media with a healthy mix of originals, all while developing that trademark experimental Living Tombstone sound brewed from just a melting pot of alcohol genres. Glitch hop, drum and bass, a stretch of rock genres, hyperpop, complextro, Middle Eastern music, that one especially likely stemming from the dude's Israeli heritage. Given these influences, driven by an electric passion for the medium and holding a desire to connect people through it, Yoav's music really began to form a distinct identity quite fast. Each one of these aspects helping to cultivate all the catchy video gamey hooks, electronic synthesizers, and often upbeat, bouncy offbeats you often hear in this stuff. Elements that are still very prevalent in the Tombstone discography, with 100% less TF2 machinimas edited to the Hebrew dub of Bob the Builder, but I guess I'll cope. Lando was also active on Newgrounds at the time, debuting a Tetris remix on Halloween of 06 to mark his switch to using FL Studio, the digital audio workstation Yoav continues to use to this day. Which, of course, he'd equip in order to produce what would go on to become one of the Living Tombstone's most monumental tracks to date. Yeah, his Discord remix, Yoav was a massive brony, and boy oh boy did nothing prove that fact more than Discord. One good-ass remix that, even at the time, went absolutely bonkers hard, enough to break out of the Living Tombstone and brony communities and make the rounds pretty damn far as internet notoriety went in 2012. At around which point, Fox, while he would stick with the alias for a while longer, began exclusively releasing new works professionally under the Living Tombstone, everybody's favorite oxymoron, even debuting with the personification of that in the form of a little mascot dude, an actual Living Tombstone. And by the way, I love that name, The Living Tombstone. Ooh, sounds like an old cheesy horror movie B flick or something, I love it. Oh what, TLT ain't familiar enough to you? I'll put you in a tombstone. Spooky, scary skeletons, man behind the slaughter, I'm already Tracer. If any of that's even remotely reminiscent to you, well, you've probably enjoyed the work of the Living Tombstone. And like every good start to an addiction, I was hooked young. Listen, I was like an avid Tomska and Edward fan like 12 years ago, watching the latest Astif movie or something. A kid who had no idea who the peak she was listening to was by. Here, I'll give myself a hint. Collaboration having pretty much almost always existed as a key concept of the then one-man band, Yoav continued to produce for both the Living Tombstone and a slew of collaborative projects for years to come, until that fateful day in 2014, when he'd gone to release the iconic Road to El Dorado remix and setting it a cool 10 million on YouTube. God, is that a banger! What's wrong? I genuinely love this remix. It's a real earworm of a track, but doesn't that sound a tad familiar? We'll put a pin on that for later. But yeah, it's a catchy one more roll, baby. And the Living Tombstone's final solo release before... Oh wait, something's missing. Oh my god, they killed the freaking mascot? Oh yeah, and then he made it... Oh, what was it? Oh yeah. Do I even need to explain how crazily this thing took off? I mean, yeah, if you want, I got time to kill. August 30th, 2014 at 7:50 p.m. Eastern, just a few weeks shy of the release of the game it was based on, nonchalantly saw an official YouTube upload of Five Nights at Freddy's. And while TLT was no small fry at the time by any means, the song barely had room to breathe before 100k, 200k, 500. FNaF was on track to 1 million hits by November, so it's pretty funny that it scrounged up 10 million hits by November, which may not compare to the kinds of explosive view counts for video game music you see on YouTube these days, but as far as I'm aware, Planet Earth had 1 billion less people living on it at the time, so I guess I'll cut him some slack. And with the blessing of good old Scott Braden Cawthon, with but one demand, to donate half the song's proceeds to Yoav's charity of choice, off it was sent to practically every major music platform under the sun at the time. So, surely with the sudden raving success of the song, you'd imagine everybody would have been on board, but inevitable so it be on the World Wide Web. A few people's heads were ruffled by the idea of a Five Nights at Freddy's song, a passionate artist working on a passion project, how could he? The subject matter of a piece of music alone is not going to be what sways me to not give it a chance. Like, I'm an adult, non-My Little Pony Friendship is Magic fan, but hey, guess who's been jamming out to Pinky's Brew, a remix based on the extended version of a song from Friendship is Witchcraft, a parody of the show, where Pinkie Pie is actually cooking up a concoction to bring back her dead parents instead of teaching Apple Bloom to bake cupcakes like in the real show so that Apple Bloom can earn a cutie mark that episode. What are you doing to me? Given all that, Lando himself, in relation to FNaF, did seem pretty damn excited about the prospect of such a concept, haters be damned. Clearly enough to spark some real inspiration in the guy. And not unlike the vast array of Living Tombstone songs already out at the time, a product of passion. I mean, hey, I feel like you'd have to be passionate about Five Nights at Freddy's to get such a well-produced output diced and sliced in 22 days. An even more impressive turnaround of 20 if you want to get technical. Those last 48 hours of production waiting on the completion of the song's very simple, if admittedly insane-looking, glitched-out visuals to complement the track. Title screen, newspaper ads, left all close till the power's out, line all that shit up with the final drop, serve it animal style, and is that how you garner the attention of the population of the entire United States? We're not even goddamn there yet. This thing got around in pretty much every form you could imagine. Fans quick to kick up a storm of transformative works to show their love for the music and the source material. Not only visually, through animated tributes and performances, but audibly too, with people giving the song the kind of attitude the Living Tombstone's been encouraging in his work since the early days. The song's tempo, vocal stems, and instrumental all available in the music video description, downloadable for free for that express purpose. And yeah, oh my god, they really didn't stop, huh? It's been a decade and there's still several remixes, mashups, recreations, covers, unironically good and scarily accurate sounding Silver Gunner rips I come back to quite frequently when I'm in the mood. Fundamentally, that original song's a pretty simple arrangement, easy to cook something up of your own with. The sheer volume likely contributing to the reason so many of them blew up in their own right, in addition to the fact that it is the goddamn FNaF song we're talking about. Even as a kid, understanding the cultural significance. Look man, I knew my shit, I was there day one for revenge, don't at me. If there's one thing to distinguish it from the FNaF song though, I would argue sung by Jack Black out of nowhere in a sponsored Markiplier video from 2015 is a possible contender. Why did he know the song? For a pretty high-ranking celebrity who you'd maybe expect to be pretty disconnected from the world of indie games, seeing this guy randomly, completely unprompted, in those goddamn shades, not only burst into song to vocalize FNaF, but make up his own lyrics was insane to see as a kid in 2015. Claiming in the song that FNaF really needs a new theme song, which speaks volumes to his knowledge at the time, but 5 years later he got it.
Five Nights at Freddy's, that's where I wanna be. FNaF at Freddy's, that's where I wanna go.
Kinda. Jack freakin' Black's obsession with FNaF is fascinating to say the least, and he does genuinely seem like a big fan of the series these days. But the fact that, even if only initially, he believes the Living Tombstone's FNaF song was an official piece of Five Nights at Freddy's material says maybe one thing about the accessibility of the song, and maybe two things, or three. Not even a year into the song's lifespan either. If that isn't the hallmark of its journey to virality, I don't know what is, dude. Not that that's even the weirdest occurrence I've ever seen in relation to the FNaF song. You wanna check out my own runners-up? How about some live bootleg mascot performances of varying production quality, I believe run by a musical act in Mexico? One of which features characters from Skibidi Toilet. No way! I can't believe that's legal. I really can't believe it. Here's a weird Spanish commercial that likely aired on actual television with 1,000 views on YouTube for trading cards, also bootleg, with the FNaF song blasted all over it. You guys think it was actually licensed and Neo have just really thought those cards were the shit? I don't know, this guy's giving me a maybe. Not as certain about this one though. A Freddy Fazbear plush with the sentience of a zooplankton singing a Spanish dub of the FNaF song, also bootleg. What are they putting in the water over there? Answer's lead, tastes like lead. But for something a tad less biohazard, how about Chicago Cubs organist Josh Langoff playing in baseman Freddie Freeman with Five Nights at Freddy's, which is the wrong spelling, but I'll allow it. This was live televised Major League Baseball. I am gonna pop a hernia. Can we get something a tad more grounded here? Oh, the song hit 90 on the daily global Spotify charts in November of last year. The first of any Living Tombstone song to reach such a milestone. There we go. Sorry, what? That's what I'm saying! And with the YouTube release bearing a view count the size of a small continent, about 8 times the size of a small continent, and yeah, as of August 6th, 2023, an actual RIA Gold certification. Okay! Yeah, I don't know, I could do with a tad more recognition. Yeah, where Minecraft and Revenge found a semi-ironic resurgence in 2019, so did FNaF, and the FNaF song around the same time. With a VR drop rebooting the franchise, an upcoming AR game to boot, and everything since, there was a lot going on. Nostalgia's a bitch, and people were not afraid to show it. Take, for example, the infamous FNaF beatboxing guy, real name Abdul Sis, the existence of which would go on to spark a chain reaction of events to the point where I will instinctively replace most words of most songs with "hor," which I'm pretty sure also gaslit half the population into believing that that's something Freddy actually says in the game. Kid singing FNaF song, one of the most raw vocal performances of the track I've ever witnessed, with an encore 2 years later. Can we get more peak? Even big FNaF YouTubers like Dorko and Coda, the latter of whom actually actively animates for TLT, each respectively performing a cover of and commission for an actual live professional big band rendition of the FNaF song. Speaking of, here's a separate entire live orchestral performance of this shit, you know, like you definitely see happen for any other video game fan song ever. Both Yoav and Sam Haft, the duo that now makes up modern TLT, clearly love the memes, by the way. My personal theory is the kids my age who grew up with 2010's Living Tombstone naturally have that nostalgic association with those songs from around the same time, making the massive semi-ironic influx of attention the FNaF songs gotten in recent years make a little more sense, I would say. And they really seem to love honoring the song through their current day music. That song did have a surprisingly immense impact on the future of TLT. The Goth remix last year, paired with a streaming platform only release of a modern surround sound remaster of the original song, not to be confused with the original professionally mixed remaster that was the version to appear for sale on music apps when the YouTube version took off, even appearing in several other TLT tracks that end up reusing the song's motifs and vocoder, including I Got No Time and This Comes From Inside, respectively, each used for their own narrative and symbolic reasons. This thing, what the hell is that doing here again? But hey, as much as I love pointing and cheering a .web file as much as the next guy, if you really want to get to know the Five Nights at Freddy's song, I can do you one better. Who wants to watch a video? Well, I just have no idea what this is. Oh, that narrows it down. Okay, Yoav has shown off the song's FLP or FL Studio project file a couple times before, once even showing off a snippet of an early instrumental for FNaF at a convention panel. But now, with the source surging at my fingertips after having been so damn familiar with it for a decade and a Living Tombstone fan even longer, this is a fantastic chance to get into the file's inner workings and peel back the layers to gaze at the fresh flesh underneath, like the skins of my enemies. And no, seriously, access to the original project means I can sift through each melody, each instrument, each effect. Yeah, what a time to be alive, right? Anyway, let's have a look, innit? Well, it sounds great. First off. Okay, hey, in a vacuum, it is a funky piece of industrial goodness. I massively dig these kinds of punchy, heavy-sounding beats. Especially with those classic TLT musical influences, I would argue that this thing is a pristine example of that, with that dubsteppy, almost electronic ska sound prominent in a lot of their work, conveying a creepy atmosphere at that in tandem with some appropriately robotic vocals from the animatronics POV to help set the scene.
The unique perspective is an engaging way to communicate a personal interpretation of what little we did know of the game's story at the time. It is a more than solid production. There is a reason people come back to the track as often as they do. TLT FLP fun findings time. This part of the song with the little high note in the back. All these years, I thought that was a backup vocal singing, yeah, it's not. It's brass.
How the f did you not hear it was brass?
I don't know. Well, okay, hardly my fault. A lot of the smooth-sounding synths and chords to be found here are hidden very deep into the very thick mix that is the FNaF song. The house preset for the SimSynth plugin, for example, may be one of my favorite pieces of the Five Nights at Freddy's instrumental, but you barely hear it in the final track. And that's just down to the way it was all mixed, mastered, and processed 10 years ago. Seriously, you don't realize how many cool, isolated sequences there are in a song you're familiar with till you get the opportunity to pick it apart yourself. It's honestly a lot of fun just to sift through it all. And this song's pretty friggin' packed. Want a slightly insane example? Every main instrument is packed into only a single pattern, which is a nightmare sentence for an FL Studio user. Let them out, they're overheating. I don't know if this was the way it was actually produced. The FLP was cleaned up a tad before it was sent over to me, so maybe just a result of that. And a raw music file means raw, unfiltered vocals you can hear switching off the vocoder. The real intriguing piece of that, though, is a very interesting outtake.
Now we're stuck here to decay. Please try to get in, don't lock us away. We're not like what you're thinking.
A slightly earlier recording at the beginning of the chorus sung at the song's regular tempo of 103 beats per minute, you know, as the vocals play out in the final song. Before, in the outtake, Yoav stops himself midway, realizing it's too quick of a pace to keep up with, and recording the next take at half speed, speeding it back up, and using that take in the final product. I really love these instrument choices too. The 8-bit sound and electronic shit mixed with a healthy dose of orchestral instruments and atmospheric pads. It really makes you wonder if you've intended to create a piece that reflected certain, like, I don't know, what were you cooking, man?
I think it was clear that this was gonna go for something almost like a horror story kind of vibe to it, which is why I picked a lot of like orchestral instruments.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense, in addition to the fact that the only real music we're given in FNaF 1 came in the form of the more traditional sounding stuff, and the Toreador, whatever the hell, has gotta be a main influence there too, right? It is the opening to the song.
What's it called again?
Yeah, right, that's what I'm saying.
Toreador March, because it's a classical piece, I thought as an extension of it being a classical piece, I should use classical instruments, and I think having all the electronic instruments alongside it as a song that felt right to make. It was also the idea that this seems in my head to fit all the themes that Five Nights at Freddy's were about for me.
Okay, yeah, that is a sentiment I completely share. Whenever I've come to think about it, the mix of ghostly synthwaves and chiptune stuff, they always gave me the impression that the instrumentation of the FNaF song was designed to emphasize the core backbone concepts behind the main game and aim to elicit that kind of imagery. The shrill of arcade cabinets, the yawn of a dingy haunted establishment, and the wispy cries of confused, restless spirits. Seriously, somehow after just 2 weeks in the oven, perfectly capturing the atmosphere of this weird, crunchy, almost early 2000s looking ass point and click.
Exactly, it has this vibe of a CD-ROM game. And growing up with this stuff, I'm so surprised that someone can just nail it again, because it seems to be kind of a forgotten aesthetic. The gameplay idea behind it is interesting, like the fact that the jump scare happens when you die in the game is really interesting to me. But the fact that there was a conversation around it was the fascinating thing for me also. And I think like the want to understand it more led me to understand that like there's something really cool going on there, but also, oh, this also reminds me of something I grew up with. This is cool.
Right? Even as an early 2000s kid myself, y'all better believe I still played my own fair share of some real jank PC adventure games, which I have to say, shared a lot of reminiscent elements with the bright and bubbly visuals Scott had already been working with for decades before FNaF, which is actually what I think makes FNaF work really well there. Scott was coming at his first proper horror game from a background of family-friendly adventure games, and dressing up that usual cutesy style of his in a coat of spooky paint drawn from his own childhood memories of entertainment venues, and that primitive 3D art style is one that I have always felt was ripe for horror.
Like, good on him for leaning into it. The fact that he had conviction and say, alright, let's go with this, is already a big decision as an artist to just decide that this is is what can work for your game, and I'm happy that he made it the way it is, because, you know, it's hard to capture that in something like this.
And with all that material laid out, it must have been a no-brainer to channel that back into the lyrics to start shaping this thing up, right?
In the way that I make songs a lot, I mean, I'm very much melodies first and then lyrics. I think it was really easy to pick a point of view and run with it. The very first line is like, we're waiting every night. The purpose was always to say, all right, if it's gonna be a song and it's gonna be about this game, the last thing people wanna hear is what they already understood or got from the game, which is that you get the point of view of the guy who's working there. So I thought something is a way to explore and at least make it interesting for the person listening is to figure out a point of view that you don't get to question enough, which is why in that sense the animatronics become the focal point.
Just as a way to shake things up?
As a way to make the listener go and ask themselves if there's something to ask about the story of the game from that angle. And that's why a lot of the lyrics are very much descriptive, hence why, like, you know, later in the song it's like the question of like, why are you the one opening the doors? Why are you the one doing all these things? It's like, I don't really have the answer as an artist, but I have a lot of observations and assumptions as to why this could be, but I leave it open enough so this becomes something for listeners to be intrigued in.
That's a cool concept, pulling that off effectively. You must have started tossing ideas around pretty fast.
I was sketching on my phone and just recorded ideas, and later when I was thinking, okay, maybe I should do a Final Fantasy Freddy song, that would be really cool, I opened FL Studio with all these different like voice memo sketches, ideas to see if there's something like a song structure going on with no lyrics yet.
Okay, and I assume from there it was just tinkering with things till they sounded good. You did put this thing together in a fortnight. I don't even know if there would have been a ton of time for early iterations.
The only meaningful difference is that it was supposed to start with the da, 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 but instead I just decided to start with the Theodore March instead, and also change the key of the song, but it was almost very much intact. In fact, I was actually using a lot of the same instruments and synths and stuff from the Road to El Dorado remix, because I did that before.
Oh my god, that makes so much sense. For years, I thought that it might have just been confirmation bias, but these two songs, they practically share an identical structure and sound pretty damn similar in the instrumental department, to the point where this sounds better than it has any right to be.
I basically just use the same instruments for the most part. So I use the same synth, so I use the same guitar, bass tone, and also the drums. It's basically the same drums. The only thing that's different in the FNaF song is that it has orchestral elements added.
So, almost like a beta release.
Like the Road to El Dorado remix is basically FNaF 0.
What a strangely historically significant remix, Jesus Christ.
Oh my god, let me tell you something. At the time, my parents definitely observed my channel and how the Living Tombstone, even at the time, was getting popular. And, you know, there was something there happening, but my parents were like, well, you should get like a degree in something. And I knew at the time that it would mean me having to juggle those two things. So it was basically deciding like, okay, because it's really hard to be successful with music. So I thought at the time like, all right, I don't really know where this is going with the Living Tombstone. Maybe I should focus on studying instead. The fact that the first FNaF song did well and it actually reached out to people, that definitely made me focus on pivoting to being a musician, basically.
The FNaF 1 song saved your entire goddamn career?
Yes.
Can it resurrect dead people? Okay, that is an insane piece of information that entirely recontextualizes the way I look at this song, and a very interesting parallel to the source material, given Five Nights at Freddy's was also the catalyst that allowed Scott Cawthon to become a developer full-time. And that also goes to show, again, the sheer scale of the FNaF song's influence, defining a cultural phenomenon, setting a music trends that continue to this day, appearing in the FNaF movie, and potentially saving Yo Lando's entire music career. Yeah, and then the song appeared in the FNaF movie. People absolutely lost their shit over this. I genuinely think that the fact that this actually happened is about as legacy-defining as you could physically get for the thing. A song created out of love for the game and its community to communicate a vision to both FNaF and TLT fans, 9 years later, directly looping back into and officially contributing to the very same franchise it was originally based on. on, making things come even more full circle when this stinker's main theme comes into play. I won't linger on this for too long, but it is just bewilderingly cool to me that the movie's banger introductory piece and Yov's FNaF song both essentially share the exact same production philosophy. Ghostly vocals, a mix of chiptune synths and orchestral elements fit with some heavy guitar riffs to boot. They're clearly both drawing the same musical conclusion from the building blocks of FNAF's base atmosphere. Another pretty funny parallel to official media in some way.
I can tell you now, it's like there was work on a remastered version, and in the movie itself they used the, if I'm correct, I think they used the remastered version, but I think they just used the YouTube version.
Oh yeah, that was what the remastered version was originally for, I think, and looking back, I don't know, it definitely sounds remastered to me. Even over those blown out speakers of the movies, I could tell that, oh boy, something crazy's going on. And insanely retroactively, actually ended up lining up more with the movie's vision of the FNAF universe than the games, focusing more on the empathetic aspect of understanding the fact that these creatures are haunted by the traumatized souls of kids, with lyrics such as "newcomers to play with us" fitting a little better here in a more literal context. It is a tragic story that, in a sea of fan works that often paint these possessed animatronics as nothing but ruthless, machine-over-mind killers with a separate murderous personality of their own, distinguishes itself in both the TLT song and the movie by placing more emphasis on these entities as the poor, tortured ghosts that they very clearly are. That, and the fact that the song understandably assumes that the first game was the only known Freddy's location, and that everything that went down in the 80s must have happened there, including the MCI that got the place shut down, bringing the MCI back to the classics location by proxy, having the stuck in our little zone since 1987 line from the song circle back rounds to actually adhering to the rebooted canon again or something. I don't know, apparently there's 2 kids inside Golden Freddy these days, I don't give a shit. But even with that, I'm gonna be real, I was like 0% surprised by its appearance. Maybe a tad. The fact that it really did seem like the obvious choice for the credits roll aside, if you knew where to look, the telltale signs that the song had been licensed out to Blumhouse were clear as day in the lead up to release. Take, for example, it literally being played before a Blumhouse preview show in the lead up to release. Don't get me wrong, actually seeing it in theaters was still an insane feeling, and it made people insane. And as an insanely neurodivergent Five Nights at Freddy's fan, owning the steelbook of this movie with the song basically baked into the disc, all because 10 years ago, Yov was hit with the sudden inspiration to turn around a smash hit in his bedroom in 3 weeks. I think that's pretty damn cool, and a well-deserved place in a piece of media dedicated to celebrating not only the games, but the fan community fueling them. The movie's release even ultimately boosting streams and sales of the song. And speaking of fans of the Living Tombstone, literally, if not for not only the FNAF song, but the Living Tombstone as a whole, I seriously don't think I'd be anywhere near as experienced a musician as I am today, had I not grown up loving their music and running with that inspiration to channel my own producer dreams into the material plane. The 3 million of you out there with tons of apparent nostalgia for the Five Nights at Kanji's 3 song I pissed out when I was 14 never would have happened without TLT. Same goes for most of the other fan songs I've ever created.
I think over time I more care about the stuff that I make to be important, and being known for this song is something that over time I realized, like, I just really like the empathic connection that I can have with people.
I mean, if the ultimate goal is to create that kind of feeling through music, I'm happy to say it goes both ways. I wouldn't be the person I am today if not for FNaF, the Living Tombstone, and the so many works of art that were influenced by both. And I don't think TLT are blind to the impact. The hiring of a full orchestra for the song's 10th says it all. Yov, and I'm sure Sam Haft also, seem not only to care about preserving such a vital piece of their history, but care also for the way that song, among many, many others of the Living Tombstone, have brought so many people together through the inherent love of stupid internet shit. But that's shit that people like myself have an infinite amount of drive to create for. And if that doesn't make every piece of fan work a result of nothing but pure passion, then goddamn, tell me what does.
There's a lot of value to fandom songs in that regard.
Hell yeah, celebrating your hyperfixations is fun as hell, and especially me being an attention deficit neurodivergent content creator like yourself, sure as shit would I know it. And sure as shit did I know it back then too. You can bet your lucky Fazbear I was making my own slightly dogshit Living Tombstone remixes back in the day. And people haven't stopped celebrating TLT in the fandom since. And by people, I really do mean literally everybody. Yoav himself contributes to this shit. Wanna know where half of Silvergunner's high quality FNAF 1 song rips come from? The original FNAF 1 song FLP. By proxy, helping to make his own fan content. How does that...
I'm so meta.
Even if the FNAF song was ultimately just one piece of the puzzle, it's amazing seeing a niche internet band I've followed for over a decade grow into so much more. These guys are signed with WMG under the TLT founded label Ghost Pixel Records. Yoav's doing his own solo projects like Sugar Vision. Hell, TLT merch is available at Hot Topic now, literally up there with FNAF's droves of merchandising. And right now, TLT is currently wrapping up the tail end of their second tour in the fictional Living Tombstone band member get-ups. Like, look at how genuinely wicked this is. I can't even joke about this. I really do have aspirations as a music producer of some sort in addition to this whole internet video thing. And researching for this project, not only has it been a 2 years in the making crazy nostalgia trip, but it's totally amped up my drive for wanting to do that. So hey, you might be seeing a little more music from me from now on, so whoa, watch out, son. And truthfully, I really do have the Living Tombstone to thank for all of this. Thanks, Yoav.
Yeah, for sure.
So, new music, right? Yo, if you don't mind if I commit a little copyright infringement.
Oh, yeah.
Sweet!